A large storm will be coming to the United States for Thanksgiving, and this is going to bring several different problems, including the potential for heavy snowfall, heavy rainfall, and also the threat for severe weather. And then as we go into Black Friday and the weekend, we'll be dealing with an Arctic blast that'll bring the potential for very cold weather for a large chunk of the United States, and also two more shots for snow, one of which that'll be impacting areas around the Great Lakes, and then the other of which that could impact the Ohio Valley over the weekend. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 to 10 days. Let's begin with what's happening across the country this morning, and for the time being, it's just cloudy for most of the country. We have a lot of clouds that are currently moving from west to east. Overall, doesn't look super concerning here just before Thanksgiving. However, later today, we are actually going to be watching for a large storm to form back over in the lower Midwest, and this is eventually going to move into the Ohio Valley and southeast tonight into tomorrow morning. It'll intensify and eventually bring the potential for some severe weather in the southeast tomorrow, and then also the potential for some snowfall and rain back over in areas like the northeast, Ohio Valley, and as well as back over in the Midwest. Now, this large storm is going to bring a ton of different problems, and as mentioned before, we are going to see very cold weather for much of the country, and we're going to go more in detail about this here in a few minutes. I just want to point out, by Thursday into Friday, we are going to have a large cold air mass sitting over areas like the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast, and as this begins to build from the air that's coming out of Canada, we are going to be seeing Arctic air for much of the country here at the end of November and into early December. It's going to make it feel very cold out there, so make sure your winter jackets are ready to go. This cold air is going to be the most impactful along the east coast of the United States and also back into the Ohio Valley, but it will still be felt across areas in the Great Plains as we go into Black Friday, eventually through the weekend and even into early next week. And this cold air is expected to linger on the east coast of the country as we even go into next week. So this could be a multi-day Arctic blast that sits here in the United States. All right, let's talk more about the potential for snowfall. And there's 3 different shots of snow over the next 5 to 7 days that are notable. The first one is going to be our more widespread event that's going to bring the potential for snowfall, but not necessarily the highest amount of snowfall total. So beginning with the Ohio Valley today, things will stay relatively dry until the afternoon, where showers will start to build on the northern side of this trough that's going to be sitting over Arkansas around this evening. Eventually, as we go into the late evening and into the overnight hours, there will be a chance that we start to see a brief transition to a mix of rain and snow, and then maybe even some pure snow across areas in central Indiana and central Ohio as we go into tonight and eventually into the overnight hours. A better chance for this will exist probably around 4 to 6 a.m. tomorrow, so just something to watch for back over into Ohio. But notice how brief it is and also how light it is. It's not going to be very heavy, so I don't anticipate much accumulation here. However, there will be another chance for snow as we go into late Friday into Saturday that we'll touch on more here in just a moment. Back over in the Northeast, this is where this particular storm is going to be the most intense, where we could see the heftiest of the snowfall accumulation. As we go into tonight, things again stay relatively dry, but overnight into Thursday morning, that is when heavy snowfall will start to pick up, especially in northern Pennsylvania, throughout New York, and also back into Vermont and New Hampshire. And eventually, as we go into the afternoon hours, this snow will just continue to dump across areas in New York and also back through central and northern New England. But notice rain mostly across the coastline, so we're not really expecting any sort of snowfall right near the coast, either in southern New England or even back into New Jersey. It should be mostly rain. With that said, that could impact some plans here for Thanksgiving if you have any outdoor activities planned for Thursday. And then eventually, as we go into the evening, this snow will start to move into areas like Maine, and the heavy snow will continue into early Friday morning before this moves out. And then eventually our second big snow event will start to form here across the Great Lakes, where we will eventually see the potential for some heavy lake effect snow that could bring feet of snow, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. So in terms of snowfall accumulation out of this first winter weather event across the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, well, overall, not a whole lot of snow is expected here over the next 48 hours, unless you're really back up into parts of like northern Michigan, for example, where we could see a few inches of snow, but that's mostly going to be lake effect snow. Same thing goes for the upper Michigan Peninsula. Some lake effect snow possible as we go into Thanksgiving. Also, some light snow possible in Ohio and Indiana. I honestly would be surprised even if we got a coating of snow, but it wouldn't be ruled out in a couple of locations. locations, it's just going to be too warm, I think, in terms of the temperatures near the surface. Back over in the Northeast, things are a little bit different here. We're talking about a lot more snowfall, especially back over in New York and Pennsylvania. Many of these areas just saw a ton of snow just a few days ago, so even more snow is going to fall on top of that, and several locations are expected to see at least 3 to 6 inches of snow. We could also see some spots in here in eastern New York get close to a foot of snow. And then back over into New Hampshire, Vermont, same thing goes, 3 to 6 inches of snow in the greatest areas. And then also back into Maine, I would expect 3 to 6 inches of snow away from the shoreline. So definitely be prepared again for some heavy snowfall. Again, it's not the most snow that you've ever seen by any means if you've lived in these areas for a while, but it's definitely notable. Could cause us some slick spots on the roadways for Thanksgiving. Now, beyond this, we do have a couple more shots for snow. The first of which is going to be our lake effect snow event, which we're going to talk more in detail about here in a moment, but this is going to be a multi-day event that happens across the Great Lakes, where we have a trough that is sitting north of the Great Lakes, eventually bringing a more westerly and northwesterly flow, which will lead to the potential for significant lake effect snow in several areas, the main locations being northern and western Michigan, also into the upper peninsula of Michigan, and then back over into northeast Ohio, northwest Pennsylvania, and also a couple of areas in western New York. Those are the areas that we're expecting the potential for feet of snowfall between now and as we go into the early to mid portion of next week. And we think this lake effect snow event will be the worst from Friday until about Tuesday of next week. So Friday, you'll see that lake effect snow really trailing back over just south of Buffalo. Saturday, same story, just south of Buffalo and also northeast of Buffalo, back over near Rochester. Sunday, it continues, and it does also continue back over Michigan. Monday, it continues, and even into Tuesday, we are still seeing lake effect snow, but more than anything, it looks like it'll start to be more in the direction of Pennsylvania and as well as northeast Ohio. So what does this exactly mean in terms of snowfall accumulation here? Well, overall, the most of the snowfall when it comes to the Midwest and also in the Great Lakes region will be mostly back over in the upper peninsula of Michigan, where we could see a few feet of snow in some spots, and then even back over into northern Michigan, we will probably have some sort of bullseye there of 2 to 3 feet of snow. Again, exactly where that falls is still a little bit uncertain, but this will give you a general idea of where that'll be happening. And then back over in the northeast for areas like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and also into New York, these areas will more than anything have the worst amount of snow out of this, where we could see the potential for some spots reaching 50 to maybe even 70 inches of snowfall. And those numbers might even be conservative, by the way, because this is a deterministic model. It does not necessarily account for a high resolution here. So these numbers, I would say, are still on the low side of things, but again, a minor change to the forecast could also drop these numbers quite a bit. So it's still a little bit uncertain, but we do think the worst of the snow will be in northwest Pennsylvania, just south of Buffalo, and then also back over north of Syracuse, where there could even be some spots that again pick up feet of snowfall. Now, our third winter weather event, which will be the least significant of the three that we've talked about, will be going into Friday night and into early Saturday morning. There will just be enough moisture here as this little disturbance will try to move here across Kansas, Missouri, and eventually into the Ohio Valley, where we actually could see some flurries, maybe even some light snowfall as we go into Saturday afternoon and evening. And this would be mostly, again, moving across areas like Missouri, eventually going to Kentucky, and also into parts of Tennessee. It's not going to be a very long-lasting event, and it's going to be very minimal overall when it comes to any accumulation. And honestly, this is still a bit of a question mark, but I do think there's a good chance we'll at least see some flurries as we go into Saturday across this area that I just outlined. So be prepared for that. Again, just a little fun maybe activity there to get outside for. It's not going to be anything crazy. In terms of accumulation, we're not really expecting much. This is the European model, at least indicating that there could be anywhere from a coating to even an inch or two in some spots, but I honestly think these numbers are quite high. I don't even know if we'll see that much. I think it'll be mostly just some flurries, and most of it would probably melt by the time it even reaches the surface. And then lastly, we are going to be dealing with a multi-day Arctic blast across the United States, and the worst of this will start in the Midwest as we go into Friday with well below average temperatures, and then by Saturday into Sunday, this is just going to sit back over in the Ohio Valley and up and down the east coast of the United States, and it will continue to sit here just to the east of the Great Plains even as we go into the early to mid portion of next week, before it'll likely start to meander more towards the far east coast and eventually move out of the country as we get sometime closer to Thursday or Friday of next week. But again, this is going to be sitting around for 5 to 7 days, so be prepared for some pretty cold temperatures. These are the temperatures that are currently being forecasted as we go into Saturday morning. So again, that freezing line will be as far south as Texas, even back into central Georgia, and as well as into Alabama. So many areas going to be getting their first freeze of the season. Monday will be one of the colder days of the entire week, or at least the next 7 days, I should say. And this will really get as far south as areas like like Florida, where we could even have some spots getting as low as the mid 30s and maybe even some patchy frost in some areas. So definitely something to watch for. Make sure you're protecting sensitive vegetation and as well as pipes, because again, it will be getting pretty cold and even frigid in some spots. And as we go into Tuesday morning of next week, many areas in the teens and many areas as well in the single digits, even back over into parts of New York. And especially if we have some sort of, hefty snow on the ground, perhaps even feet of snow, many areas could be even 10 to 20 degrees colder than surrounding locations that see no snow. So definitely something to watch for back over in parts of New York. And as a reminder, we do have a Black Friday sale happening at shopmaxvelocity.net. You can get the perfect gift for a loved one or a friend over at shopmaxvelocity.net, which is the top link in the description below. We have our Happy Holidays collection now out, featuring different t-shirts, crew necks, v-necks, youth t-shirts, and as well as mugs and stickers, flying trampoline merch, as well as our Drunk NATO merch, and then also our normal Max Velocity collection. All of this stuff can be viewed again with the top link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.